you have the possibility of two demand curves, people who may be living and then people who may be traveling. If one is getting hit hard, like if the gas prices shoot up or people travel less. So now you're focused more on the long termer. So at least you have that lever that you may not have to pull with other assets. So that's cool about RV parks.
Welcome to Truly Passive Income. I'm Neil Henderson.
And I'm Clint Harris. And today's guest is John Cascarano. He's an attorney turned operator and founder of the Blue Metric Group. They're a firm acquiring and optimizing RV parks nationwide. John is a Duke graduate with a Michigan Law JD. John scaled 20-plus property portfolio by pairing cash-flowing outdoor hospitality assets with powerful tax advantages. So think accelerated depreciation here and a playbook for institution-grade operations. John, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. So listen, we were talking a little bit before we got started about some of your first projects, but we are pretty excited to talk about RV parks today. And I know we've got a background we got to walk through first, but I feel like we've been dancing around this topic for a while. We have a few people in our lives and in our social ecosystem working on RV parks, and some of the economics are pretty impressive. There's been some economic headwinds as well. There's some trends one way or the other, and I'm really excited to unpack this. So let's jump right in. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how did you find RV parks?
Obviously I love the color blue. So Duke Blue Devil, Michigan, go blue. And RV parks, we're a blue collar company. My dad was a truck driver. My younger brother works for the company as a district manager. And I was a commercial real estate attorney. I went down the path of working at a big law firm, great training, kind of into the financial crisis. So I saw a lot happen there. And, years went by, and like many, I wanted to get into investing in real estate. I have 3 daughters, and I wanted to stop trading dollars for time. But I also wanted something scalable, something not heavily institutionally owned. And that took me to RV parks. I learned about mobile home parks, saw some cap rate compression there through clients, and then self-storage, similar thing. So I said, I want to find that before it happens again. And that took me to RV parks. And that's how I got started. I bought a park, a dentist and me bought a park together, and that's where it started.
Gotcha. Let me ask you a clarifying question, and this is just straight from my brain. When I think of RV parks, I often think of mobile home parks because it's a pad, it's electrical hookups, it's sewer and plumbing and things like that. But when I think of mobile home parks, it's people that need a place to live that are very budget conscious. And a lot of times these are great people, working class people. They need a place to go. We've all seen examples of mobile home parks that have been managed appropriately and ones that have managed not appropriately. But these are people that are budget conscious in terms of solving their living situation problems. The RV park side of things, to me, my brain goes more towards discretionary spending and retirees. So to me, it's retirees that want to get out and see the world. Now, maybe they're finally location independent for the first time, and they want to travel around and kind of see the country, see the world. And I think a lot of that is a lot of people were locked up during COVID, and we all know that RV sales exploded. People weren't able to find RV parks. And a lot of this feels like a reactionary to kind of being locked up like that. Am I right or wrong about those populations? Like, is the RV park discretionary spending, and is that at risk with something like a recession? Or is it completely the opposite, and it's a lot of people are using that as a more permanent living solution these days, or it's still cheaper than a primary residence, and so maybe it's not discretionary spending. Maybe it's still a better option. Unpack that for me.
Yeah, it's what is an RV park and who's the customer? It's broad, and that's why this sector hasn't been consolidated by institutions to date. But it's yes, you get people who are retired, boomers, traveling. It's their lifestyle. They may have $1 million plus rig and shop at Target or Walmart, and discretionary income, that's one segment. And within that, some of those folks are what we call the Class A segment, where they may have a motor coach, like what a band or sports team drives around. And I've seen some, and we have one park where, I mean, it's just beautiful in Montana, and you go in and these are just decked out, and I mean, it's like it could, like the Phoenix Sun or whatever, could be using this thing. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I mean, you've got parks where they may pay 150 a month for lot rent, just like a low end mobile home park. And that's the other end of the spectrum. And you have everything in between. And we've got parks where maybe lot rent is 600 or 700. We have one 40 minutes north of Nashville where I'm at. It's a long-term park. The infrastructure is the same as a mobile home park, except no mobile homes, but it's RVs and they're paying lot rent. And it's teachers, firemen, it's people who it's their life, their living choice, because Nashville's run up in price. And so it's an affordable housing solution and they like it. And you'll see, you drive through the park, you may have $20,000 RVs and you may have $200,000 RVs. And that's a nice park actually, but you get everything in between. You get ones with Margaritavilles with bars and food service and water slides. And so it's a very broad market.
So it can kind of be whatever you need it to be or whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. And then you talk about national parks, state parks. There's actually a rise in the millennials and Gen Z. Actually, we have some pie charts we sometimes show on that, where if you think about it, what people discovered, a lot of people during COVID, especially younger people, was you have Wi-Fi, you're mobile, you're independent. It's kind of American. You're an American thing. Like you're free. And if you're working online on the computer, you could be at Glacier one week, you could be at Mount Rushmore the next. That's super cool. And so you've seen this increase in the pie chart in some younger demographics traveling, and it's part of their lifestyle.
Well, and the rise of Starlink has created Wi-Fi that's pretty much Wi-Fi anywhere. We're already people working remote a lot with the work from home, work remote thing, and people have just gone to an extreme and they've gone full remote and mobile, and pretty much just taken their house mobile, and their house is wherever they do their RV hookup.
Yeah, it reminds me. So my wife and I, well, I guess about 2 years ago now, we went on a boat trip for a couple weeks up and down the East Coast, and there's an entire ecosystem of people that have lived that way for years that don't really even know what's going on in the mainland, that are moving up and down. And then starting about, I think 4 or 5 months ago, we went on our first RV trip, and we've been on another one since then, last month. And we had a ball. We got 2 kids, 6 and 2. And man, we had the best time. And same thing, entire ecosystems of people out there talking about all the different places that they love and tips and tricks and what you learn. And it's a whole population and a whole cultural shift. So that has really made me a believer just in the last few months of experiencing that from the consumer side. It's actually really cool. It's super awesome. Talk to us about on your side of things, on the commercial real estate side. What do you love about this? I know there's depreciation components. I know you're recapitalizing probably through the BRRRR strategy, but talk to us about what you love about RV parks and some of the strategies that you guys are implementing.
Yeah, well, as a consumer side, that's core. What you just described is core memories, with your kids and family, and that's been going on a long time, and that's really cool, like a cool thing. And in this country, there's so many beautiful places. So that's one thing I love about who we're serving, the consumers, and what we're providing. But I'd say that a thing from a consumer standpoint that bleeds to the business side is, because there's so many different kinds of RV parks, as a consumer, it's hard to know what you're getting, like what amenities, how safe is it, how good's the Wi-Fi. So the brands are all over the map. It's very mom and pop owned still. So it's very hard to know what you're going to get when you stay at a park. And that's something we're doing, trying to bring some consistency to our parks as we build a portfolio. And it is the BRRRR strategy at the end of the day. It's you buy it, buy, rent, rehab, refinance, repeat. I mean, that's the strategy. And sometimes it's bringing fixing some deferred maintenance. Maybe the seller didn't have the capital or time to do that, but sprucing up the amenities, fixing up some of the sites, fresh coats of paint. To back up though, I do love the tax advantage too. That's because that. Going in, there's a lot of 5 and 15-year property that you could accelerate. Usually more than if you have a mortgage loan, it's usually more than your basis, your equity basis that you're bringing. So it's super attractive under the big beautiful bill, similar to mobile home parks, and we get cost segregation studies on them, so that that going in. So I love that. I generally you can get higher yield, so that's available. Um, and I like that you can sometimes have, well, you have the possibility of two demand curves, two different customer segments, people who may be living and then people who may be traveling, or transients, we sometimes call them. And sometimes if one is getting hit hard, like if the gas prices shoot up, or there's, downtimes, people travel less. Okay, so now you're focused more on the long termers. So at least you have that lever that you may not have to pull with other assets. So that's cool about RV parks too.
I was just thinking about risk factors. There's going to be, up and down trends, but you also mentioned national parks. So what kind of a risk factor is a federal government shutdown, which we are currently 3 weeks into?
That's a great question. And if you give me a little longer, I'll probably have some more data on that. There's a lot of volunteers at the parks. There's a good ethos around the park workers. We've still seen good traffic. We haven't seen a downtick of traffic, just looking at some of our week to weeks. At Glacier or Mount Rushmore, those are premium national parks. It's a risk factor though. The park gets shuts down. That may be why they're coming to that park. But we haven't seen those. But now Glacier it's cold there now. So that one, we're at the end of the season. So that's good. That's good for us on that park. That is a risk factor, no doubt. Yeah.
So what does the seasonality look like? Like you're sunsetting some of these parks, or shuttering for 3 to 5 months out of the year?
Potentially, yeah. If they're up north, our Montana park, like our park near Glacier, totally shuts down. The freeze goes several feet down into the ground, and we winterize that. There's a whole checklist, and it's heavy 5 months of the year, especially June, July, August. September, it's rocket, and then then we shut the doors. Mount Rushmore is a little longer season, but still seasonal. Anything down south is probably year round. And then you get some other seasonality, maybe Southwest, where it's the opposite. It's super hot in the summer, but then the winter it's gorgeous. So if you definitely have to think of that. And it can be the ones that are heavy seasonal and maybe more management intensive too. Like our Glacier Park, there's a full staff there. And there's other income streams too that come with that. Like we rent e-bikes, you could ride through Glacier. But, I'm in Nashville, as I said, so Southeast, those are year-round parks. Summer's going to be the high season, but they're year-round. So there's January, February are going to be the light months. You can have a blend of campers, people, and if there's folks living there, you can kind of, one simple way to look at it is like cover the mortgage January, February, and the expenses. Just try to have enough long-termers, and then the remainder of the sites, yes, you can rent transient, but you could try to flex within a little range, try to take more monthlies into the off season and try to pare it back. Generally, there's seasonality at all the parks, but it's definitely something to consider.
You touched on the tax benefits with depreciation. Which site improvements consistently move the needle the most? And which ones would you say maybe look good on paper, but don't translate into losses on K1s?
I'd say good Wi-Fi is a good, from a consumer standpoint, that's a top thing we look at right away. A lot of parks, depending where they're at, they may not have great Wi-Fi, or some don't have great cell service. So that's something we have we got a guy, we got a Wi-Fi guy now. And, he'll go stay at the park and go through the park and test and put up these things. And that's not a expensive amenity. But that's a big amenity. Pools are something that's tricky. I'd say that's where I've had some pain, some learnings when it comes to pools, and get that in pool inspected really well. Don't let the seller not give you access to every inch of that pool. We've had a bad water leak or two. You get into insurance things. That was an early learning. The fence height, the latches on the fence, and then pools can be money sucks. good amenity, but then during the high season, but that's something to watch. Be careful of. Clean bathrooms. That's an important one. You'll get reviews, on that, and then just good electric. That's something to inspect. Good electric and plumbing. Where's the poo poo go is a big thing. Those are things where you'll get reviewed. The level of the sites is something to pay attention to, especially for savvy RV people. They'll review you on that. So just how much slope is to the land. Think of if you're not an RVer and you're buying one, you need to think of that. Some of those rigs are pretty big these days. And the electrical, sometimes there's unexpected problems where if the electrical hasn't been done right or updated in a while, you fill that park, you get a big caravan of 40 people coming in, booking a bunch of sites, and they all plug in and your fuses start going out and things start tripping and then you got a problem. So those are, it's kind of like the basic infrastructure, but those are the depreciable things too. Some of that, just that infrastructure stuff, where you're investing, you're getting that good tax benefit, but it's just the core critical stuff. Focus on that stuff. And then sometimes just fresh coats of paint, the entrance, like a nice looking sign. People don't think of that. And then a website that works. And maybe if you could get that booking system where people could see their sites, like pictures of the sites, just like the basics, the little things like that matter.
That's so funny. Our Wi-Fi went out on one of our RV trips, and I was like, wow, this really changes everything. Because we were there and I had to work for a couple hours and had to go drive and find a place while we were there. And I was like, yeah, this really is a huge game changer. But if you have that, you can be completely location independent. That's what Starlink does. It's really cool. So
yeah, Starlink's great. But you may get one bar at that park. You may only have one bar on your site. So you try to tether,
right?
And you're like, but I only got it's going. And then you're like,
Yeah. You found out too late. And it's kind of like Neil and I have short-term rentals at the beach. They get stress tested during peak season when it's 100 degrees outside and everybody's blasting the AC. That's when you find your problems. And it's when everything's booked, when you're really making money, and then you got to start dealing with, either getting it fixed or cancellations and lost revenue. So it's really tough when you're only being stress tested during those hard times. Let me ask you this, in terms of digging in a little bit more on the depreciation side of things. Obviously, you can't depreciate the land, but you can depreciate basically everything else, meaning your road systems, your curbs, your street lights, the electrical, the Wi-Fi, your pads, the gravel, the railings, the fire pits, the office, the bathrooms, all infrastructure except for the dirt. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. So it's a lot of amenities. I know you guys are vertically integrated. Are you guys adding amenities? Are you building bathhouses and stuff like that? Or are you primarily focusing on places that just have deferred maintenance?
It's nice if it's just deferred maintenance. We have done expansions. We have several of those ongoing. We have built bathhouses. We've kind of got standard office buildings too. That little welcome center. You may have some 27.5-year property, in that, but the cost seg firm will break that up. But that little welcome center check-in, you may have a little store. So we've started to standardize those plans and collect those plans as we go and try to build the same thing. But hopefully we're just sprucing that up. Fresh coat of paint on that. Bathrooms, they may be from the 80s or 90s. And if we could just update those, just like your home bathroom, just make them spruce them up. That's nice when it's just that, and you don't have to build a bathhouse. And then because building one could take you into some of the septic or sewer. If it's city sewer, that just like any property, that's preferable. We've switched some to city water and sewer, but the poo poo can be the barrier in looking at any expansion, whether it's more sites or bathhouses.
Yeah. Does it make any sense at all I know people are doing expansions, but I haven't seen anybody develop a new RV campground in a long time. I'm assuming the towns probably don't love it from a tax revenue standpoint. Based upon the taps, they're not making much money. Does it make sense, or is the model, your model is pretty much predicated on buying existing and optimizing because there's some barrier to entry from new development? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's a good characterization. I've seen there's some carnage on the development side. A lot of folks said, well, how hard could it be? I'm going to build an RV park. And there's a lot of carnage. Like during COVID, there was, the boom, there was this RV boom. And so people said, "Oh, I'm going to build one." And they found them, costs. It took way longer to get approved. They ran into the health department. That took way longer. And we saw some of that just on some expansions that we tried to do or are doing. And we're doing it, but it just took way longer, a year or two longer. And yes, it's kind of like what happened with mobile home parks. The same is happening here, where it could be very hard or impossible to get approved to build what you think you can build. That seems super simple. And you may run into unexpected challenges. And so we've looked at, so we bought one for less than replacement costs. They did a great job, but it took them like 2.5 years longer than they thought. And the partners kind of had a breakup. So we were able to buy that one. And that was a little risk because we took the lease up risk, and it could take longer to lease it up. No one knows about it. There's no search history. A lot of these are just, a well optimized Google My Business page and people finding it. And as they travel it, they like it. They'll come back each year, but that takes time. And I think people underestimate that. There's one or two kind of sob stories where, like, one seller started crying on the phone with me and my acquisition guy, like, what do we do? Because their mortgage was this, and the park was not leased up, and I was like, talk to your bank, man, that's rough. It's harder. I'd be just careful developing. There's a lot more risk than people see.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the health department. How is the health department usually involved in acquisition or development of RV parks?
It goes back to the wastewater primarily. Now, if you have food service or something, which is less common, there could be that, but it's really wastewater and approvals, whether it's sewer, septic, or leach field. It may only be a $70 form and stamp, but they may need to come inspect. It may be a real process, and that's where it comes in, the wastewater.
Help me understand the future here. Break out your crystal ball. Obviously, this is the first chance I've had an opportunity to ask somebody that's actually in this profession, in this line of work. I know not even enough to be dangerous, but I do know there was something like $1 billion worth of RVs at one point that were sold and back ordered during COVID, that they couldn't make them fast enough, and that they were like millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of RVs were purchased and had to be produced and manufactured. And I'm sure that some of those orders ended up being canceled. And my understanding is I think they're caught up now, but you're exactly right. We had a RV park boom, and it was everybody, like, overnight switched from talking about Airbnbs to RV parks. It was like this big shift that happened really quickly. And then that was kind of around the time people were talking about Airbnbing RVs and renting them out with outdoorsy and things like that. It was this big shift. So I'm sure you know the data on this. Where are we going to be 5 and 10 years from now? Like, what's happening with the consumers? What's happening in this space? Like, my parents retired and we're like, we're going to go travel the world in an RV. And 8 months later, they're done. And they're settling in the Shenandoah Valley River in Virginia. And that's where they're going to be now, because it was a lot. So, like, where are we in the cycle of things, and where is this going to be long term? Is this a stable asset class?
I would say there's going to be, my guess is the overall trend is steady growth. That's what I see. We definitely saw some of this during COVID. We saw this, and then we saw this, and that hurt, especially people who developed stuff during that phase. And then that impacted the lease up. The transient is tied to the economy. There's gas prices and how much people travel, just like hotels. Like, it's going to be similarly correlated. And I still like the overall trend, but I think you're going to see people like us distinguishing ourselves with some of the amenities that are consistent, like adding pickleball courts. We're doing these little things. So every park we go to, we're working hard on the brand, on the loyalty. We want people to stay at our parks and really work on that and distinguish ourselves by having a little nicer amenities and being consistent. I think there is this uptrend. There's kind of two trends too, like the sales of RVs. You can get a great deal on an RV still. I mean, no doubt. They made a bunch of them. So they're kind of odd, like RV park usage is a different curve than RV sales themselves. So if you want an RV, it's a great time to scoop one up. But I think affordable housing is very stable. Our parks, the longer term tenants, that's been very stable. So we definitely saw a downtick year over year. There was a decline for sure, like end of 23, 24, that like post COVID period where things kind of normalized. There was a downtick like that we felt that with some of the US and Canada stuff. We saw fewer people coming down from Canada too. But some of that was just economically driven there too. People come down and then it slowed, and we saw some of the cancellations, and so that was a little thing. The longer term has been stable, particularly in good MSAs or good markets where people need housing. So the need for affordable housing is not changed. Like that's there. So if I were steering people, I would say just focus on, don't try to create the demand. Make sure the demand is there, and you'll be okay. If you could get those longer termers, or there's a really good draw like Glacier National Park, amazing draw. Yes, there'll be these blips or things hopefully, but there's evergreen demand. Some of the parks a little more remote, we've seen more pain where they're off a highway. Maybe there's nothing there, and it's largely transient. We felt some pain on some of those for sure.
So talk to me how this works for passive investors, for LPs. What are the opportunities look like? Are they single asset syndications? Are you running a fund? How does it look?
We've typically gone deal by deal. This year we created a fund, and then we got this big portfolio under contract. So that's like our big thing, which is transformative for us. Like we have about 150 million in assets before it, and then we got $100 million portfolio under contract. And I was never interviewed so much to win a contract. Like that seller, he once sold 55 parks to ELS, publicly traded REIT, and Sam Zell right before the financial crisis. Great timing. Then that hit, and he had retired and then got bored playing golf and saw the opportunity and started doing it again. And then we have seller financing. So he interviewed us. I took some of my ops team on the road with him for like a week. We were not the highest offer, but I had to convince him that we were the right operators. He cared, he's done well financially. He cares about who buys it. He's 77 years old. So he wants seller financing. He doesn't want to he wants to go back to playing golf and get to know his wife again, as he said. So those were things we really spoke to and convinced him, like, no, we can operate these well. So yeah, and then for us, that's, classic. That's what we're acquiring this year that's left, but that's classic GPLP structure in our case. But I can also speak to if people wanted to buy their own too. I would listen to some of the earlier stuff, just think about how you're going to operate it. Is the demand there? Do you know the area? Do people need housing? What's your contingency between those two demand curves, long terms and transients? But yeah, we're buying a big beautiful portfolio that hopefully rewards us from the big beautiful bill.
Yeah, that's all. I love how you leaned into like what makes them work and what makes them not. I've only had experiences twice. We went to Sun Outdoors in Ocean City, Maryland, which has great amenities. Ocean City's right there. We were up there for the White Marlin tournament. It was awesome. And then the second place was Jellystone in North Carolina in Tabor City, which is a phenomenal brand. And they did have exactly what you said. They had the water parks, the craft shack, the giant trampolines, the pickleball courts, the basketballs, the baseball fields, they had 7 ponds. It was a lot of stuff. And I was like, there's nothing here. It's in the middle of nowhere, but they did a really good job of making this the destination. And like, if you're going there, you're parking for the weekend and you're not leaving the park again. And it's awesome. The other one we went to was like, this is a cheaper way to stay in this area and explore a lot of really cool things around here. So when you talk about you guys are creating a brand, there's consistency, there's amenities. You can make those core memories there at that location. Or you're talking about national parks that are going to have a million or sometimes multiple millions of visitors per year, that you're either next to the attraction or you have to make yourself the destination, which I bet you is a harder lift out of the two if those amenities aren't already there. But that makes so much more sense to me than just any arbitrary RV park that you put next to a pond or a lake or somewhere. really leaning into that branding sounds like the smartest strategy to me, because in a fragmented market, that consolidation is going to create consumer expectation. And that has to do with the place that they go or the amenities that are going to be there as a destination. I love that. That's validating to hear you say that.
It's like, I mean, other resort, the experience is being there, and that's hard to build and create. There's also, for some, there's Jellystone, there's KOA. Those are typically franchises. We have a couple KOAs where we hang but even KOA in the downtimes, they'll lean into they'll start coaching the franchisees about attracting more longer termers when they see the downturn coming. So
let me ask you about the exit. So if I'm an LP and it's a typical GP LP structure, I'd love to know what kind of return profiles you're typically laying out there and what the timeline is. And then if you are implementing the refinance strategy, is that forced appreciation, value add, and then refinance to pay out the investors, and then the investors are out and you guys are holding on to the deal long term? How does all that work?
I mean, we keep investors in. I mean, that is the target. Let's try to force that appreciation, prove it to the bank, but really based on the NOI. Have we driven NOI? Have we gotten the revenue up? Expenses a lot of times are what they are. They don't change a ton. So if we could get that revenue up, and there's other cool things to think about, like we pick up extra land. So sometimes it's glamping. Sometimes with some we've added these storage things. So there's these other uses. You pick up this excess land sometimes as part of the park by just trying to drive the NOI higher. And then we keep LPs in, we try to invest in every deal ourselves. So that's what we want, and that makes it really attractive. You get a big tax loss, hopefully some cash on cash, working the refi, and if we could bring a chunk back to the LPs, but then we're in indefinitely. For us, we have 30 parks now, and we're about to get 7 more big ones. We're trying to be the leading aggregator of these. And the exit is a sale to PE or going public as a REIT, which is something I kind of want to do. There's never, to my knowledge, there hasn't been a pure play RV REIT. And the public markets at the right times can value these prospectively, not looking back the way we always are in real estate at the historic NOI, but what are the forward earnings? And that could be really attractive to investors. So hopefully the refi gives one spit back of cash, and then at the final exit, there's another chunk.
Yeah, that's nice. And it's evergreen. And when you're paying them out with refi, there's no capital gain right there initially. So there's some tax savings there as well. But then eventually, like light at the end of the tunnel with a big PE exit or something like that. That'd be amazing. I love that.
Well, John, in the interest of time, I want to start wrapping it up here, but we always like to finish off with the same question we ask all of our guests, which is, what's a book that you find yourself recommending again and again to friends and colleagues? See, you're looking around for it.
One of my favorites is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. Great. It's short chapters. It's kind of like years and years of him journaling, advice from the chairman of the board, as he calls it. But it's about minimizing the dumb tax that we all pay as we learn stuff.
The Road Less Stupid. I love that. Nobody suggested that. 150 episodes. I don't think I've heard that one yet.
No, not yet.
Every once in a while, like every 10 episodes or something, somebody costs me a book. And that's what you just did, John. Now I got to go buy a book. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Great. Well, listen, John, we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Thank you for walking through what you're doing with Blue Metric Group. Sounds like you got a lot of beautiful things on the horizon. I look forward to watching it and learning more about it. If any of our listeners want to connect more with you about your RV parks, about your projects, or investing in what you have coming down the pipeline, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, email me at john@bluemetricgroup.com or support@bluemetricgroup.com. Just shoot an email and we'll happy to carry on the conversation.
That sounds great. All right, John, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening and watching the Truly Passive Income podcast. If you liked the show, if you think it would be useful for someone else, the greatest compliment that you could give us would be to share the episode. Leave a comment down below or leave us an honest review. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know down below. And remember, with truly passive income comes freedom of time, place, and the freedom to pursue your higher purpose.